I got a message from my 19 and 16-year-old brothers. They said they've been thinking about me a lot and want to get to know me. I thought about ignoring it, then I realized this might be my only chance to expose the truth. This morning, my brother texted me, "Please, just talk to us. I need an outsider's perspective on whether I'd be in the wrong here. I'm a 21-year-old man who was placed in foster care at the age of 9 due to the abuse I endured from my stepfather, a man my mother repeatedly chose over me. Despite the support and interventions meant to protect me, she refused to remove him from our lives. Even after obtaining a restraining order against him, she still allowed him back into our home. Over the years, they had 2 more children together, my half-brothers, Richie, 19, and James, 16. It became clear that no matter what, she would continue to prioritize him, allowing him to make me the scapegoat for everything that went wrong. Eventually, I was removed from the home, while my mother was permitted to keep and raise my brothers as if nothing had happened. From what I know, my stepfather never harmed them. My mother is still with him. I know this because I've checked her Facebook more times than I care to admit. Growing up, it was devastating to realize that my mom would rather give me up than fight for me. She could have kept me if she just left him, but she didn't. This abandonment left me with deep scars and a lot of issues to deal with as I grew up. It didn't help that she cut off all contact with me almost as soon as I was placed in foster care. She wouldn't even show up for court-ordered visits. Foster care was also really rough for me. I bounced around 3 different families, and it wasn't until the last one that I got any therapy to help me make sense of what had happened. A few days ago, out of nowhere, I got a Facebook message from my 19 and 16-year-old brothers. They said they've been thinking about me a lot and want to get to know me. They even mentioned that our mom talks about me sometimes and wonders how I'm doing. They said he'd like to start some kind of relationship if I'm open to it. And 19yo said he would be willing to drive him and 16yo to come and visit me wherever I am in the country. They both seemed nice in this message, and I don't have an issue with either of them. At first, I planned to ignore the message since I want nothing to do with my biological family. But then a darker thought crossed my mind. This might be my only chance to expose my stepdad for the monster he truly is. I could finally tell my half-brothers everything he did to me, everything he put me through, and let the truth hit them all at once. I realized that doing this would likely destroy any possibility of having a relationship with them, but honestly, I'm not sure I want one anyway. When I mentioned this to my friend, he strongly advised against it, saying it wouldn't achieve what I hoped for. He believes my brothers would just see me as bitter and spiteful rather than questioning their father. But as painful as it would be, I know that if I were in their position, I'd want to know the truth about my dad's past and how he treated others. I also have no idea how much they actually know about why I was placed in foster care. So, would I be the asshole if I went through with it? Update. Hey everyone, I wanted to come back and share an update. First off, I really appreciate all the advice and different perspectives. You all gave me a lot to think about. After reflecting on what was said and discussing it with my therapist, I realized that my initial plan to tell my brothers everything about my stepdad wasn't really about helping them. It was more about me holding on to my own anger and pain from the past, and that wouldn't be fair to them. Many of you pointed out that they likely don't know the full story and are innocent in all of this, and that really hit me. So, I decided to reach out to my 19-year-old brother and asked if he'd be open to meeting up. I didn't bring up anything about our mom or stepdad. I figured if we're going to build a relationship, it's best to take things slow instead of overwhelming him with all of that right away. We ended up meeting at a cafe. I was super nervous, but when I saw them, it actually felt nice. They were both really nice, and we just talked about normal stuff, like what we've been up to, our favorite football teams, that sort of thing. It was weirdly easy to chat with them. At one point, the 16-year-old brother asked why I was placed in foster care. That caught me off guard, but I decided to keep it vague and just said that things were complicated at home back then, and that going into care was what was best for me at the time. 16-year-old started pushing a bit for more details, but the 19-year-old told him to knock it off, which honestly was a relief. By the end of it, I was glad I went. They asked if we could stay in touch, and I said yes. I'm still figuring out how much to share about what happened, but for now, I'm just trying to focus on building a relationship with them. I realized that while the past is important, it doesn't have to dictate how things go with them now. So yeah, thanks again to everyone who helped me see things clearer. I'm feeling a lot more hopeful about this, and I'm really glad I didn't just go with my gut reaction to tell them everything right off the bat. We'll see where things go from here, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Update. Before anything else, I want to address some of the comments I received. I saw a lot of people calling me selfish for wanting to expose my stepdad, while others said I was a coward for not doing it. Some claimed I was letting an abuser get away with it by staying silent, and I even received DMs accusing me of being an abuse apologist. Others called me a liar just because I didn't immediately answer James's question when we first met. I never said I wasn't going to tell them about my past, just that I'm working on finding a healthy way to do it, with the help of my therapist. And yet, some people acted like they knew exactly what I should do and insisted I should have told my brothers everything right away. No matter what I do, it seems like someone will be upset, and I understand that. But I'm trying to handle this situation in a way that feels right for me. So please, be respectful of that, even if you would have handled things differently. To be clear, I am not letting my stepdad get away with anything. As a child and teenager, I did everything I could to get him prosecuted, but I've had to accept that it will never happen. Just remember that I'm a real person who reads these comments. I don't always make the perfect choices, but I'm doing my best. I'm not saying this to stop people from giving advice, I genuinely appreciate it, but please, be kind and constructive. I don't need more negativity. That being said, in the past week, I've met up with my brothers 3 more times, once with both of them and twice with just Richie. Surprisingly, there's been an instant bond between us, something I didn't even realize I wanted. I've been really enjoying spending time with them, which is amazing considering I never thought I'd want to see any of my family again, let alone start building a meaningful relationship with some of them. When I last met up with Richie alone, we went to go see a movie and then get something to eat. We spoke about our plans and what he does now. And we got talking about me and foster care. I asked him what he had been told about me growing up. He said they haven't been told much, but that mom sometimes talks about me. I asked him what he remembered of me and why I was taken into care. He said he has some memories, fuzzy memories, and clear memories. But he said he didn't know for certain what happened. He said he remembered a lot of fighting and arguing between me and SD. He said he had one very clear memory of me, but said he didn't know whether it was appropriate for him to share it or not. He asked me what I remembered, and I said it was difficult for me to talk about with people. He said he understood if I didn't want to get into it. I asked him what his clear memory was. He remembered me being about 8 years old, my SD stripping me naked and putting me in a dog's collar and making me eat dog food. He said he remembered his dad hitting me with his belt as I was eating out the dog bowl and crying. This actually happened many times for me growing up, but he said he only remembered it once. I started crying and he apologized for bringing it up, and I said don't. I was glad he at least remembered some things of my abuse. He said he guessed that the abuse by SD was the reason I was taken away. I said yeah. I asked if SD ever abused either of them and he said he hadn't ever. But he said he wasn't close to either my mom or his dad. He said they weren't ever amazingly loving people, but never abused them. He said he was sorry again. We talked more about our childhood, and since he already remembered some of the abuse, I felt safer opening up about it. We discussed it in more detail. I tried to answer his questions, and he answered some of mine. When he asked if the trauma still affects me, I was honest and told him that it does. I even shared that I've struggled with suicidal thoughts in the past and have attempted to end my life multiple times because of it. He apologized for not being there for me and for not standing up for me, but I reassured him that none of it was his fault, or mine. We can't change the past, and I don't blame him for anything. After our conversation, we each went home, and later, he messaged me saying he was glad I grew up and that I managed to keep living. It came across a little odd, but I know he meant it in a kind way. Honestly, I feel incredible knowing I have a brother who genuinely cares about me. Just a few weeks ago, I never would have imagined that he'd even like me, let alone that we'd start forming this kind of bond. Update. Hey everyone, it's been 16 days since my last update, and I wanted to share how things have been going. I'm still working on building a relationship with my brothers, but it's turned out to be more complicated than I expected. While things started off surprisingly well, it's become clear that we're all processing different versions of our shared past. After Richie opened up about his memories of the abuse, we've had more conversations about what I went through. I didn't want to keep avoiding the topic, so I decided to share a little more, though I've been careful not to overwhelm them. However, James has been acting a bit distant since then. I can't help but wonder if he's struggling to process everything. I wouldn't blame him, it's a lot to take in, especially for someone who had no idea what was really happening back then. And I didn't even go into detail, I only told him that I was abused by his dad when I was young and that it led to me being placed in foster care. I only shared that much because he asked me again. Richie has been supportive, but I think even he's starting to feel the weight of it all. We had a pretty intense conversation a few days ago where he admitted that he's feeling conflicted. On one hand, he loves his dad, but on the other, he now knows what a monster he was to me. It's like he's torn between two realities, the dad he grew up with, who was far from perfect but never abusive to him, and the man who made my life hell. He hasn't said it directly, but I think part of him feels guilty for not experiencing the same horrors I did. I think he feels like I got it so he and James didn't. I keep reminding him it's not his fault, but I can tell it's weighing on him. Richie has been hanging out with me like 3 times a week though, and we have a good time together when we do hang out. As for James, he's been pulling away. I tried reaching out to see if he wanted to meet up, but he keeps making excuses. I get it, I probably dropped a lot on him. I've decided to give him some space and not push too hard. I've learned that everyone processes trauma and difficult truths in their own way, and maybe he needs time to wrap his head around everything. Despite all of this, I've started to feel a bit lighter. Sharing my story, even if it's just pieces of it, has been hard, but it's also been freeing. I spent so many years carrying this alone, and while I'm still cautious about how much I share, I'm beginning to realize that I deserve to be heard, too. I'm continuing therapy, and my therapist has been amazing at helping me figure out how to balance opening up with protecting myself. Something I didn't see coming was my mom reaching out. A few days ago, she sent me a message on Facebook saying she wanted to talk about the past and that she misses me. It's the first time I've heard from her directly in years, and honestly, I don't know how to feel. Part of me is still incredibly angry, furious, even, that she allowed everything to happen. But another part of me is curious. I don't know if she's finally realized the truth or if she just wants to brush things under the rug without really taking responsibility. I haven't responded yet, and I'm not sure if I will. It's hard to tell if she's actually changed or if this is just too little, too late. Right now, my focus is on building my relationship with Richie and James. I hope that, with time, James will come around and we can all find some closure. But I'm also coming to terms with the fact that not everything can be fixed, and that's okay. Sometimes, you just have to learn to live with the past. Thank you again for all the support. Reading through your comments has really helped remind me that I'm not alone in this journey. Update. Hey everyone, I wanted to check in with a quick update. First off, I just want to say thank you to everyone who reached out and sent kind messages. I really appreciate the support. After my mom asked to meet up, I felt really conflicted. I haven't had much contact with her since I was removed, and the idea of seeing her again brought up a lot of emotions. After thinking it through and considering all the advice I received, I decided it was best not to respond. I chose not to meet up with her and completely ignored her message, knowing that even a simple reply could take a toll on my mental health. Not long after, James reached out and asked if we could meet up. I was happy to hear from him, especially since it felt like he had been avoiding me after I told him the truth about what our mom and his dad did to me. I invited Richie too, but he couldn't make it, so it was just me and James. We went to the movies and had a good time, until he brought up our mom. He told me how much she wanted to see me, and I explained that I just wasn't ready right now. Honestly, I don't know if I'll ever be ready to meet her again. He started saying how it's selfish of me to not at least talk to her. And I tried to reiterate that I wasn't ready to talk to her and how what she did to me has caused so much pain and damage to me. He started to say something like, she's not the same person anymore, or something, but I cut him off. I tried to shut it down there and said I don't want to discuss it further, and if he was going to keep bringing it up I would just drop him back off at the train station. He called me a dickhead and told me to just drop him off, so I did that. And not long after that he blocked me on everything. Which I admit I was really upset about. Richie called me and told me that James was upset and had been venting about me being selfish at home. Richie said that, for now, it might be best for us to keep some distance, even though he still supports me. He explained that he has to navigate things within his own home until he's able to move out and be independent. I understand his position, but it still made me really sad. That was about 2 weeks ago, and I haven't heard from either of them since. Even though I've been sending Richie memes on Instagram every few days, just like we used to, he hasn't even opened my messages. Honestly, I'm not sure what to do at this point. I feel pretty disappointed by how things have turned out. I don't know if this is the right place to ask, but if anyone has any advice on how to handle this, I'd really appreciate it. Update. I deleted my previous account because I was in a really dark place, but I have proof that I'm the original poster if anyone needs it. It's been about 4 months since my last post, and I left things in a pretty bad place. Not long after my last update, I attempted to take my own life. It wasn't the first time, but I truly believed I had moved past that. I'm grateful to be here today, and I'm so relieved that my attempt failed. If anyone reading this is struggling with similar thoughts, please reach out to someone. You are valuable, and the world is a better place with you in it. I mentioned this before on my old account, but before Richie and James came into my life, I never felt the need for a family. I didn't crave it, and I didn't think I needed it. But once they were there and then suddenly gone, all I could think about was how I had messed everything up again. I blamed myself, tore myself apart over the idea that I had ruined everything. But now, from a better mental space, I can see that I didn't do anything wrong. At the time, though, it didn't feel that way. Just over 6 weeks ago, Richie reached out again. He said things at home had settled, and he wanted to try reconnecting. I told him, politely, because I truly don't hold any resentment toward him, that unless he was ready to have a full and committed relationship as siblings, I couldn't go through this again. I couldn't handle another breakup. I know that's not quite the right word, but I don't know how else to describe it. I told him if he wasn't ready, I would understand, but I couldn't keep putting myself through the cycle of hope and loss. He told me he was ready, and he promised me that if he had to make a choice, he'd choose me over them. I asked him about finances and how he'd manage, but he said he had it sorted. At the time, I didn't realize, but later I found out that Richie and James' paternal grandfather had passed away and left them both a substantial amount of money. So we started again, and it felt like no time had passed between us at all. He told me that I was all anyone spoke about in the house for about 2 weeks after everything fell apart. How I was selfish, and mean, and evil. How my mom had posted rant after rant about me on Facebook, wondering how she raised such a selfish, evil person. I didn't know, because I haven't checked her Facebook in a while, although I used to obsessively. If I had the energy for it, I'd go on and comment something like, "You didn't raise such a selfish, evil person because I was removed into foster care because of the abuse you and SD put me through. Mother of the Year." But honestly, I don't think I could cope with the fallout of it. Anyway, Richie said he wasn't going to tell his parents about getting back in contact with me. He said he wanted to move out and then go and see with them to support me. I told him I didn't care if he told them or not, or if he cut them off or not. That was his choice. The only thing I needed from him was consistency. Either he was in my life, or he wasn't. No more back and forth. Since then, things with Richie have been going really well. Better than I ever expected, honestly. He's starting to feel like my best friend, which is something I never thought I'd say about a family member. We see each other all the time, and it just feels right. Like I finally have someone who understands me and actually wants to be in my life without conditions. I don't think I realized how much I was missing that until I had it. For a while, Richie kept our conversations private. He didn't tell anyone at home that we were talking again, and I was okay with that. It wasn't about secrecy, it was just easier for him that way. But somehow, James found out, and it caused a lot of tension for Richie at home. From what Richie told me, James was really upset about it. I don't know exactly what was said, but it was serious enough that Richie decided to move out sooner than he had originally planned. He had intended to wait a bit longer, but with all the conflict at home, he just wanted to leave as soon as possible. James still hasn't reached out to me, and honestly, I don't expect him to. I've come to terms with that. I hope that one day, he'll be able to look beyond his loyalty to our parents and realize that I'm not the villain they've made me out to be. But I also understand that he might never reach that point, and that's out of my control. People believe what they want to believe, and right now, he's not ready to see the truth. Maybe he never will. The silver lining is that, despite James' reaction, no one has actually tried to stop Richie from seeing me. That, at least, is something. Most importantly, I'm finally feeling better about life again. After everything, I'm starting to believe that I deserve happiness. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful.